Ava Sinclair made the mistake of being polite to the wrong man, accepting a coffee from a regular customer at the cafe where she worked, not realizing he'd spent 2 months planning this moment. 20 minutes later, she's stumbling through Hell's Kitchen at midnight, vision blurred, legs weak, with him following close behind and intentions that make her skin crawl. That's when Romeo Costa sees her from his SUV, recognizes immediately what's happening, and steps out into the street with murder in his dark eyes. What he says next to the man following her is simple and lethal, and what happens after he carries Ava's drugged body to safety proves that sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is exactly who you need when the world shows its ugliest face. Ava noticed him the first time he came into the Rosewood Cafe about 2 months ago. Hard not to notice. He always sat at the same booth in the corner, always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a slice of whatever pie they had that day, always stayed exactly 45 minutes, and always left a $20 tip on a $12 bill. At first it seemed generous, sweet even, a regular customer who appreciated good service. Ava was a waitress at Rosewood, had been for 8 months since moving to New York, and good tippers were worth being extra nice to. So she smiled at him, remembered his order, asked how his day was going. That was her first mistake. Being nice. His name was David. He'd told her that the 3rd time he came in. David Morrison, worked in finance, lived alone in the neighborhood, loved the cafe's atmosphere. He was maybe 45, average height, average build, average looks. The kind of man who was completely forgettable except that he kept coming back. Every Friday night. Always the same booth. Always watching her with eyes that lingered too long. The comments started small. "You look pretty today, Ava. That's a nice shade of lipstick. You should wear your hair down more often." Compliments that straddled the line between friendly and uncomfortable, but never quite crossed it enough for her to complain to her manager. Then they got worse. "You have beautiful legs. I bet you're even prettier without that apron. If I were your boyfriend, I'd never let you work this late alone." Comments that made her skin crawl, but that he always delivered with a smile, like they were perfectly normal things to say to your waitress. Ava started avoiding his table when she could. Let other servers handle him. But he'd wait. He'd sit there nursing his coffee until she had to come over because they were closing, or because he specifically asked for her. And she couldn't refuse because she needed this job, needed the tips, needed the money to pay rent in a city that was crushing her financially. Tonight was a Friday, David's regular night. Ava had been dreading it all day. He showed up at 10:30, half an hour before closing, took his usual booth, ordered his usual coffee. But tonight something was different. Tonight he stayed past closing, waited while Ava cleaned tables and counted tips and did her closing duties. Waited while the cook left and the manager locked up the back. Waited until it was just Ava finishing up, and him sitting there smiling. "You work too hard," he said, when she finally came over to tell him they were closed. "Let me give you a ride home. It's late. Not safe for a pretty girl like you to be on the subway this time of night." "I'm fine, thank you." Ava kept her voice polite, but firm. "I take the subway every night. At least let me buy you a coffee for the road." He was already standing, already moving toward the counter. "I insist. You've been on your feet all night. You deserve something nice. Really, I'm okay." But he was already behind the counter, pouring coffee from the pot into a to-go cup, adding cream and sugar the way he'd apparently memorized that she liked it, pressing the lid on carefully, holding it out to her with that smile that made her uncomfortable. "Please. I'd feel terrible if you didn't take it. After all the wonderful service you've given me these past months." Ava took the coffee because saying no felt more dangerous than saying yes. Because he was standing between her and the door. Because he was a regular customer, and she'd been raised to be polite. Because sometimes being a woman meant doing things that made you uncomfortable just to avoid confrontation. "Thank you." She took the cup, forced a smile. "I appreciate it. Any time, Ava." His eyes did that thing where they traveled down her body and back up. any time at all. She left through the front door, heard him leave behind her. Walked quickly toward the subway station 3 blocks away on 42nd Street, coffee cup warm in her hands. The street was moderately busy for midnight on a Friday. People heading home from bars and restaurants. The usual Hell's Kitchen mix of tourists and locals and people who belonged to the night. Ava took a sip of the coffee. It tasted normal. Maybe slightly bitter, but coffee was bitter. She took another sip. By the time she reached the second block, something was wrong. The streetlights looked too bright. The sounds of the city felt muffled and distant. Her legs felt heavy, like she was walking through water. Another sip of coffee and her vision started to blur at the edges. Oh, God. The cup slipped from her hand. Coffee splashed across the sidewalk. Oh, God, no. She'd been drugged. David had drugged her coffee. The realization hit at the same time her legs nearly gave out. She grabbed a parking meter to steady herself. Tried to think through the fog descending over her brain. Phone. She needed her phone. Needed to call someone. But when she tried to reach into her purse, her hands weren't working right. Everything felt disconnected, like her body wasn't hers anymore. Need help? The voice behind her made her jump, made her heart rate spike even through the drugs. David was there. Of course he was there. Had probably been following her the whole time. You don't look so good, Ava. Maybe I should give you that ride after all. No. The word came out slurred. Ava pushed off from the parking meter. Tried to run. Her legs weren't cooperating. She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving forward because stopping meant letting him catch her. Don't be difficult. His voice was closer. He was following, not even trying to hide it anymore. I'm just trying to help. The street was less busy on this block. Fewer people. The ones who were around were looking away, not wanting to get involved. Ava tried to scream, but her voice wasn't working right. Tried to run, but her legs were giving out. She was going to pass out. Going to collapse right here on the street. And David was going to, God. She couldn't even think about what David was going to do. That's when the black SUV pulled up next to her. Stopped so abruptly the tires squealed. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. Ava's drugged brain tried to process what she was seeing. Tall. Very tall. Wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than she made in a month. Dark hair with silver at the temples. Face that was all sharp angles and harder edges. And eyes. Dark eyes that swept over her stumbling form and then locked onto David behind her. The man's expression changed. Went from concerned to absolutely lethal in the space of a heartbeat. He moved past Ava. Stepped between her and David with the kind of presence that made the air feel heavier. When he spoke, his voice was deep and cold and carried an Italian accent that made every word sound like a death sentence. Touch her and die. 3 words. Simple. Absolute. David stopped walking. Actually took a step back. I don't know what you think is happening here, but this is between me and my girlfriend. She's not your girlfriend. The man's voice dropped lower, darker. She's drugged. You drugged her, and you're following her. I know exactly what you're planning to do. What I'm trying to decide is whether to kill you here or make you disappear somewhere quieter. Look, man, I don't want trouble. Too late. You already have trouble. The worst trouble you've ever had. The man pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in rapid Italian. Then he looked back at David. My men are coming. They're going to take you somewhere and have a very detailed conversation about what you are planning to do tonight. And then, depending on what they find out, they're going to decide what to do with you. If you're smart, you'll tell them everything. If you're very lucky, you'll die quickly. 2 men appeared from a side street. Large, professional. They grabbed David before he could run. Dragged him toward a different vehicle. David was screaming now, protesting, threatening to call the police. The tall man laughed. Cold. Humorless. Call them. Tell them Romeo Costa's people grabbed you. See how that works out for you. David went pale, stopped struggling. The two men shoved him into their vehicle and drove away. Ava watched all of this happen through a haze of drugs and fear and confusion. Her legs finally gave out. She started falling. Romeo caught her before she hit the ground, strong arms scooping her up like she weighed nothing. One arm under her knees, one supporting her back, pulling her against his chest. I've got you. His voice was different now, gentle, concerned. You're safe. I promise you're safe. Ava tried to speak, tried to explain that she'd been drugged, that David had drugged her coffee, that she needed to go to a hospital. But her mouth wasn't working right. Words came out garbled and wrong. Shh. Don't try to talk. Romeo was carrying her toward his SUV, opening the back door, settling her carefully on the leather seat. I know you were drugged. I'm taking you somewhere safe. A doctor is going to check you. You're going to be okay. Hospital. Ava managed to get the word out. Need hospital. No hospital. Too many questions. Too much attention. My doctor is better anyway. More discreet. He carried her inside and the SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly. Romeo sat beside her in the back seat, pulled her upper body against his chest so she wasn't lying down completely. Kept one arm around her shoulders. Ava's head was spinning. Her vision was blurring. She could feel herself losing consciousness. The last thing she remembered was Romeo's voice, low and reassuring, telling her to sleep, that he had her, that she was safe now. When Ava woke up, she had no idea where she was. The room was dark. No, not completely dark. There was light coming from somewhere, soft and indirect. She was lying in a bed, an incredibly comfortable bed with sheets that felt like silk. Her head was pounding. Her mouth tasted like cotton. Her body felt heavy and disconnected. Memory came back in pieces. The cafe, David, the coffee, the street, Romeo. Ava sat up too quickly. The room spun. She grabbed the edge of the mattress and waited for the vertigo to pass. You should move slowly. The voice came from her right. Ava's head snapped toward it. Romeo was sitting in a chair near the window, partially silhouetted against the dim light filtering through expensive curtains. You've been asleep for about 6 hours. The drug is mostly out of your system, but you're still going to feel effects for a while. Where am I? My home. My penthouse, specifically. Romeo stood, moved closer, stayed far enough away that he wasn't crowding her, but close enough that she could see him clearly now. A doctor examined you while you were unconscious. You're going to be fine. No permanent damage, though you'll probably feel like hell for the next day or so. Ava looked down at herself. She was still wearing her clothes from the cafe. Someone had removed her shoes and socks, but everything else was intact. Even her apron was still tied around her waist. I didn't undress you. Romeo said it like he'd read her mind. The doctor needed to check your vitals, but everything else I left alone. Your dignity is intact. I promise. Thank you. Ava's voice was hoarse. For saving me. She gestured vaguely. All of this. You don't need to thank me. Romeo sat on the edge of the bed, not close to her. Just close enough that they could talk without him looming over her from across the room. What happened to you tonight should never happen to anyone. I'm sorry it did. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. You couldn't have known. I should have. I own this neighborhood. I make it my business to know what happens here. The fact that piece of shit was operating in my territory without me knowing. Romeo's jaw tightened. That's a failure on my part. Your territory? Ava's drug-fogged brain was trying to process that. You said your name was Romeo Costa. That name, she'd heard it before. Somewhere. Your men called you. She paused, trying to remember. They called you capo. Yes. Romeo's dark eyes held hers. I'm a capo in the Moretti family. Do you know what that means? Mafia. The word came out as a whisper. Yes. Romeo didn't look away, didn't soften it. I'm what people politely call a businessman and what everyone else calls a criminal. I control territory in Hell's Kitchen and parts of the surrounding area. I run protection rackets and manage certain business interests that operate outside legal boundaries. I'm not a good man by most definitions, but I have rules. And one of those rules is that women are protected in my territory. Always. What that man did to you, Romeo's voice went colder. That violates every code I live by. What are you going to do to him? Ava should probably be scared, should probably be horrified, but she'd been drugged, had been about to be assaulted or worse, and this dangerous stranger had saved her. He's being questioned right now, finding out if you were his first victim or if there are others, finding out where he lives, where he works, who he knows. Then, Romeo paused. Then, I'm going to make sure he never hurts anyone ever again. You're going to kill him. Would that bother you? Genuine question in Romeo's voice. If I told you that man was going to die because of what he tried to do to you, would that bother you? Ava thought about it. About David following her. About the drugs in her coffee. About what would have happened if Romeo hadn't stopped his SUV. No. Honest answer. No, it wouldn't bother me. Good, because he's not the kind of problem that rehabilitation fixes. He's the kind of problem that only stops one way. Romeo stood. You should rest. There's a bathroom through that door if you need it. Water on the nightstand. Pain medication next to it if your head hurts. I'll be in the living room if you need anything. Wait. Ava grabbed his wrist before she realized what she was doing. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. I'm nobody. Romeo looked down at where her small hand circled his wrist, then back up at her face. You're not nobody, Ava. You're someone who needed help and didn't get it from anyone else. That makes you someone worth helping in my book. But why? People need help all the time. You can't save everyone. No. But I can save the people I see who need saving. And tonight I saw you. So I saved you. It's that simple. Romeo gently extracted his wrist from her grip. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. He left. Closed the door softly behind him. Left Ava sitting in his expensive bed in his expensive penthouse trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. She should leave. Should call the police. Should go home to her tiny studio apartment in Washington Heights and try to forget this night ever happened. But she was exhausted, and her head hurt, and the bed was so comfortable. And somewhere in this penthouse was a man who'd saved her life and promised to protect her. Ava lay back down, pulled the silk sheets up to her chin, told herself she'd leave in the morning, told herself this was temporary, told herself she wasn't already feeling safer here than she'd felt anywhere in months. When she woke again, it was morning. Sunlight was streaming through the curtains. Her head still hurt, but less than before. Her mouth still tasted terrible, but at least she could think clearly now. Ava got up slowly, found the bathroom Romeo had mentioned. It was ridiculous. Marble everywhere. Shower that could fit 4 people. Heated floors. More luxury than she'd seen in her entire life. There were new toiletries laid out for her. Toothbrush still in packaging. Toothpaste. Soap. Shampoo. Even a hairbrush. She used all of it. Brushed her teeth 3 times trying to get rid of the drug taste. Washed her face. Tried to make her reflection look less like someone who'd been through trauma. Failed pretty thoroughly at that last part. When she emerged from the bathroom, Romeo was in the bedroom. He'd clearly just showered too. His dark hair was still damp. He was wearing jeans and a black Henley shirt that showed off his build. More casual than the suit from last night, but somehow even more attractive. Good morning. He held out a mug. Coffee. Thought you might need it. It's not poisoned, I promise. The joke was too soon. Ava flinched. I'm sorry. Romeo's expression shifted immediately to regret. That was inappropriate. I shouldn't have said that. It's okay. Ava took the coffee. Sniffed it cautiously. Took a small sip. It was good. Really good. Better than anything the Rosewood served. There's breakfast in the kitchen if you're hungry. Romeo gestured toward the door. I didn't know what you liked, so I made options. Eggs, toast, fruit, pancakes. Take whatever you want. You made breakfast? Ava followed him out of the bedroom, into a hallway, into an open living space that was even more ridiculous than the bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. Furniture that screamed money and taste. I live alone. Romeo was moving around the kitchen with practiced ease. I learned to cook or starve. He gestured to the island where food was laid out. Sit. Eat. You need to get your strength back. Ava sat. Started eating because she was actually starving. Couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Yesterday afternoon, maybe. The food was incredible. Everything perfectly cooked. She ate 3 pancakes, 2 eggs, and half a plate of fruit before she even thought to slow down. Romeo watched her with something that might have been satisfaction. Good. You're eating. The doctor said you'd be hungry once you woke up properly. How much do I owe you? Ava set down her fork. For the doctor. For all of this. I don't have much money, but I can pay you back. It might take a while, but I'll pay you back. You don't owe me anything. Romeo poured himself more coffee. I'm not keeping a tab, Ava. I'm helping you because it's the right thing to do. Nobody helps people for free. There's always a price. Not with me. Not for this. Romeo leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking at her with those intense, dark eyes. You were in trouble. I had the resources to help. That's the whole story. There's no hidden agenda. No debt you need to repay. You're free to leave whenever you want. Just like that? I can just walk out of here? Just like that? Though I'd prefer if you stayed until you're completely recovered. Another day or 2 at least. Make sure there are no delayed effects from the drug. Romeo paused. And I'd like to talk to you about David. About whether you want to press charges or handle this a different way. What other way is there? My way. Romeo's voice dropped. The way where he disappears and never hurts anyone again, and you don't have to testify in court or relive what happened over and over. The way where justice is swift and permanent. You mean murder. Ava should be horrified, should be running for the door, but she wasn't. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about solving a problem. There's a difference. Romeo moved closer, sat on the stool next to her. I understand if that makes you uncomfortable. I understand if you want to go the legal route. But I'm offering you an alternative. One where you don't have to see him again. Don't have to be afraid he'll get out on bail or get a light sentence or come looking for you later. One where he just... Romeo snapped his fingers. Stops existing. And if I say yes? If I tell you to do it? What does that make me? Human. It makes you human. Romeo's hand covered hers on the counter. Warm. Solid. You're not a bad person for wanting someone who tried to hurt you to face consequences. You're just practical. Ava looked at their hands. His so much larger than hers. Scarred knuckles against her smooth skin. She should pull away. Should put distance between herself and this man who was casually offering to commit murder on her behalf. But she didn't. Instead, she looked up at him. Do it. Make him disappear. Are you sure? I'm sure. I don't want to see him again. Don't want to testify. Don't want to spend months or years dealing with a trial where his lawyer makes me look like I led him on or asked for it. I just want him gone. Then he'll be gone. Romeo squeezed her hand gently. By tonight. I promise. Thank you. You don't need to thank me for this. But you're welcome anyway. Romeo stood. I have to go handle some business. You should rest. There are clothes in the guest room that should fit you. Help yourself to anything in the apartment. The TV, the books, the food, whatever you need. I'll be back this evening. Romeo. Ava caught his hand before he could leave. Why are you being so nice to me? Really, there has to be a reason. He looked at her for a long moment. Because when I saw you last night, stumbling and scared and drugged, trying so hard to get away from someone who wanted to hurt you, something in me decided you were worth protecting. And when I decide something, I commit to it completely. You're under my protection now, Ava. That means you're safe. That means you're cared for. That means anyone who tries to hurt you answers to me. For how long? For as long as you need. Or want. Whichever is longer. Romeo touched her face gently, one rough finger tracing her cheekbone. Rest. We'll talk more tonight. He left, and Ava sat in his kitchen surrounded by luxury she'd never experienced, eating food she hadn't paid for, wearing yesterday's cafe uniform, and trying to understand how her life had changed so completely in less than 24 hours. She spent the day exploring the penthouse. It was huge. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, office, library, gym, balcony overlooking the city, everything decorated with expensive but understated taste. Books in Italian and English, art that looked like it belonged in museums, a wine collection that probably cost more than her annual salary. In the guest room, she found the clothes Romeo had mentioned. Women's clothes in her size. Still had tags on them. He'd apparently had someone go shopping while she slept. Jeans, sweaters, comfortable loungewear, underwear and bras. Everything tasteful and appropriate. Nothing that suggested he expected anything from her. Ava showered again, changed into clean clothes that actually fit. It felt like washing away the last of David's touch, the last of the drugs, the last of being that scared woman on the street. She tried to read, couldn't focus, tried to watch TV. Nothing held her attention. Kept finding herself at the windows, looking out at Manhattan, thinking about Romeo and what he was doing, thinking about David and what Romeo had promised. Romeo came home just after 8 p.m. Ava heard the door, heard his voice talking to someone in Italian, heard another voice respond, then footsteps. He found her in the living room. She'd curled up on the couch with a book she still wasn't actually reading. It's done. He sat in the chair across from her. David Morrison no longer exists. The world is safer without him in it. Just like that. Just like that. Romeo leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We found evidence. Other women. At least 4 others over the past 2 years. He had a pattern. Young women who worked service jobs. Women he thought were vulnerable. Women no one would believe or who wouldn't report. You weren't his first, Ava. But you were going to be his last. Ava processed that. 4 other women. Maybe more they hadn't found. I should feel bad about him being dead. But I don't. You shouldn't feel bad. Feeling relief that a predator is gone doesn't make you a monster. It makes you normal. Romeo stood, moved to sit next to her on the couch, respectable distance, but close enough that she could feel his presence. How are you feeling? Physically? Better. Head doesn't hurt anymore. Don't feel foggy. Good. The doctor said you'd be fully recovered within 48 hours. You're ahead of schedule. Romeo paused. I know you probably want to go home. Get back to your life. But I'd like you to consider staying here a few more days, just to be safe. Safe from what? David's gone. From the aftermath. From questions. from anyone who might have been watching or who knew what David was doing. I'd feel better if you stayed here where I can keep an eye on you, where I know you're protected. You want me to stay here? In your penthouse? With you? Yes. Romeo's dark eyes held hers. I want you to stay. Not because I expect anything from you. Not because there's a debt. But because seeing you drugged and scared last night did something to me. Made me protective in a way I haven't felt in years, and I'd like to make sure you're completely safe before you go back to your normal life. Ava should say no, should insist on going home, should put distance between herself and this dangerous man who'd killed someone for her. But she looked at Romeo, really looked at him, saw the concern in his eyes, the genuine care, the protective instinct that seemed to radiate from him. Okay. She heard herself say it before she'd fully decided. I'll stay. A few more days. Something shifted in Romeo's expression. Relief, satisfaction, possessiveness. Thank you. You won't regret it. I promise. He made dinner, insisted she sit at the kitchen island and keep him company while he cooked, made pasta from scratch, moved around the kitchen with the same competence he brought to everything else. They talked, about nothing important at first. Favorite foods, movies, books. Getting to know each other in a way that felt normal, despite the absolutely abnormal circumstances that had brought them together. Then the conversation got deeper. Why Hell's Kitchen? Romeo asked while they ate. Why New York at all? You're not from here originally. I can hear it in your accent. Midwest somewhere, Ohio, Columbus. Ava twirled pasta on her fork. I moved here 8 months ago. Wanted to be somewhere bigger, somewhere with opportunities. Thought I'd find work as a graphic designer. But you're waitressing instead. Can't get design jobs without experience. Can't get experience without jobs. Can't afford to intern for free because rent in New York is insane. So yeah, I'm waitressing. It pays the bills. Barely. You're talented, though. Romeo gestured to her phone on the counter. I saw your portfolio last night, while you were sleeping. I hope you don't mind. I was curious about you. You looked at my phone? Ava should probably be angry about that invasion of privacy, but it seemed minor compared to everything else. I did. I'm sorry. It was wrong. But your work is incredible, Ava. You should be designing, not serving coffee to people who don't appreciate you. Tell that to the 50 companies that rejected my applications. Ava took a drink of wine. Really good wine that Romeo had opened without asking if she wanted any. Just poured it like it was assumed. You probably don't understand what it's like. Struggling. Being broke. Having talent that no one wants to pay for. No, I don't. Romeo's voice was honest. I grew up with money, with connections, with opportunities handed to me. But I understand working hard. I understand wanting something and being told you can't have it. And I understand what it's like to be underestimated. You? Underestimated? You're a mafia boss. Who underestimates you? Everyone who thinks I'm just muscle, just violence, just a criminal without depth. He leaned back in his chair. I read philosophy. I collect art. I appreciate good food and good music. But all anyone sees is the man who breaks legs and runs protection rackets. You'd be surprised how limiting other people's perceptions can be. So we're both frustrated creatives trapped by circumstance? Something like that. Romeo smiled. First real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face from intimidating to handsome. We should start a club. The Underappreciated Club. Membership of 2. Perfect. I'll have shirts made. Ava laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange after everything. But good. Like maybe things could be normal again eventually. They finished dinner, cleaned up together, moved to the couch with more wine. sat closer than they had before, close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. "Can I ask you something?" Ava turned to face him. "About last night. Anything. When you saw me. When you stopped. Why did you get out of the car? You could have just called the police. Why get involved personally?" Romeo was quiet for a moment. "Because I recognized what was happening. I've seen it before. Men who prey on women. Men who think they can get away with it because they're careful or clever, or because their victims won't fight back. And Romeo's jaw tightened. I have strong feelings about men like that. Personal feelings? My sister." Romeo's voice went flat. "When she was 19, at college, someone drugged her drink at a party. She doesn't like to talk about what happened next, but I found the guy, and I made sure he never hurt anyone again. So yes, very personal feelings. I'm sorry. That must have been horrible. For her. For you. It taught me that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like regular guys. Finance guys. College students. Guys who sit in cafes and leave good tips and seem perfectly normal." Romeo looked at her. "When I saw you stumbling, saw him following you, I knew. And there was no universe where I was going to drive past and let that happen. You saved me." Ava's voice was soft. "You really, actually saved me. I did what anyone should have done." Romeo reached out, tucked a strand of her copper hair behind her ear. "The fact that I was the only one who stopped just means everyone else failed you." His hand lingered against her face. Warm, rough, gentle despite the violence she knew he was capable of. Ava's breath caught. She was suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how his dark eyes were looking at her, how her heart was beating faster. Romeo. She didn't know what she was asking, but he seemed to understand. "Tell me to stop." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "Tell me this is too soon. Tell me you're vulnerable and I'm taking advantage. Tell me anything that means I need to keep my distance. What if I don't want you to keep your distance? Then I'm going to kiss you." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "And I'm going to keep kissing you until you tell me to stop. Because I've been thinking about it since you woke up this morning looking like something precious I need to protect. Since you ate pancakes in my kitchen. Since you laughed at my terrible joke. Since you chose to stay here with me instead of running. I should run. Probably. You're dangerous. You killed someone today. For me. That should scare me. Does it? Does it scare you? No. Honest. It doesn't. Maybe it should. But all I feel is safe. Protected. Like nothing can hurt me as long as you're here. Nothing can hurt you. I promise you that." Romeo's hand slid into her hair, cradled the back of her head. "Last chance, Ava. Tell me no. Kiss me." She leaned closer. "Please kiss me." He did. Slow at first. Gentle. Testing. His lips soft against hers. Asking rather than taking. Ava made a small sound and opened her mouth, and Romeo deepened the kiss. One hand still in her hair, the other sliding to her waist, pulling her closer. Ava had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this combination of gentleness and possession. Never like she was something precious and dangerous at the same time. Never like the person kissing her would burn the world down if it meant keeping her safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Romeo rested his forehead against hers. "That was," he paused. "That was better than I imagined." "You imagined it? Since the moment you opened those blue eyes in my guest room. Maybe even before that. When you were drugged and helpless, and I was carrying you to my car thinking about how someone tried to hurt you, and how I was never going to let anyone hurt you again. Possessive." Ava smiled against his mouth. "Very possessive." "I'm a possessive man, Ava. If we do this, if you let this happen, you need to know that. I don't share. I don't do casual. When I want something, I commit completely. And I want you. We just met. Less than 24 hours ago. Under terrible circumstances. This is probably a terrible idea. Probably. Romeo kissed her again. Longer this time. Deeper. Are you saying no? No. Ava's hands fisted in his shirt. I'm saying yes. I'm saying I want this. I'm saying screw timing and circumstances and logic. I want you too. Christo. He pulled her onto his lap, positioned her so she was straddling him, hands on her hips, holding her close. You're going to be the death of me. You're literally a mafia boss. I think you can handle me. Can I? Because right now all I can think about is how good you feel against me, how perfect you fit, how much I want to keep you here forever. Forever's a long time. Then how about we start with tonight? Romeo's hand slid under her sweater, warm palms against her skin. How about we start with right now and see where it goes? Where's it going to go? My bedroom, if you want. Only if you want. Romeo pulled back enough to look at her. Really look at her. I need you to be sure, Ava. I need you to be choosing this freely. Not because you're grateful. Not because you feel like you owe me. But because you actually want this. I want this. She kissed him. Hard. Certain. I want you. I'm choosing this. Freely. Completely. I'm choosing you. Romeo stood, lifted her with him like she weighed nothing. Ava wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck. Let him carry her down the hallway to his bedroom. His room was different from the guest room. More personal. Dark furniture. Dark sheets. Photographs on the dresser. Books on the nightstand. This was where he actually lived, not just where he kept guests. He set her down on the bed gently, stepped back, gave her space. One more time. Are you sure? Ava answered by pulling her sweater over her head, dropping it on the floor, reaching for him. Romeo growled, actually growled low in his throat. Then he was on her, hands and mouth everywhere, taking his time, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch, what made her say his name in that breathless way that seemed to drive him crazy. They took their time. No rush. Just exploration and building heat and the slow burn of tension finally being released. Romeo was careful, attentive, made sure she was with him every step, made sure she wanted everything before he gave it to her. And when they finally came together, it was intense and overwhelming, and nothing like Ava had ever experienced before. He was gentle and demanding in equal measure, protective even in passion, made her feel precious and desired and powerful all at once. After, wrapped in expensive sheets with Romeo's arms around her and his heartbeat steady under her ear, Ava felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Certainty. The knowledge that somehow, impossibly, the worst night of her life had led to this. You're mine now, Romeo murmured against her hair. You know that, right? I'm keeping you. You're not going back to that cafe. Not going back to struggling. You're staying here with me. Possessive. Ava's voice was teasing, but her heart was pounding. Very, very possessive. Get used to it. He tightened his arms around her. I'm going to take care of you, Ava. You're going to finish your portfolio. You're going to get a real design job. You're going to have everything you want. And I'm going to make sure nothing and no one ever hurts you again. You can't just fix my life. Watch me. Romeo tilted her face up to his. I've got resources. I've got connections. I've got money. And I've got motivation because the woman in my arms is talented and deserving and has been struggling too long. So yes, I can fix your life. And I will. Why? Why do all this for me? Because you're mine. Simple as that. And I take care of what's mine. Romeo kissed her soft. Sweet. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start planning your future. Ava wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle her own life, wanted to maintain her independence. But she was warm and safe and protected, and Romeo's arms felt like home. And for the first time in 8 months, she wasn't worried about rent or bills or where her next opportunity would come from. So she closed her eyes. Let herself sink into the feeling of being taken care of. Let herself believe that maybe, possibly, things were going to be okay. The days after that first night together fell into a pattern that felt both surreal and perfectly right. Romeo worked during the day, handling his business interests that Ava learned not to ask too many questions about. She spent her time updating her portfolio, taking online courses, building the skills she'd let atrophy while waitressing. Every morning, Romeo made coffee. Every evening, he came home and asked about her day like it mattered. Every night, they fell asleep, tangled together in his bed, like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. A week after she'd decided to stay, Romeo found her crying in his office. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears while she stared at her laptop screen. What's wrong? He was across the room in seconds, crouching beside her chair, hands on her knees. Talk to me. I got another rejection. Ava gestured at the email on her screen. That's 37 now. 37 design firms that looked at my portfolio and decided I wasn't good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just go back to waitressing. No. Romeo's voice was firm. Absolutely not. You're incredibly talented, Ava. These firms are idiots for not seeing it. But if they won't hire you, we'll find another way. What other way? I've applied everywhere. Then we make our own way. Romeo pulled her out of the chair, into his arms. I have connections. People who owe me favors. Let me make some calls. I don't want a job because people are afraid of you. I want a job because I earned it. Then earn it. Romeo tilted her face up to his. But let me open the door. Once you're in, you prove yourself. Your talent speaks for itself. I'm just making sure the right people see it. That feels like cheating. That feels like using available resources. There's a difference. Romeo kissed her forehead. Every successful person has connections, Ava. Has people who helped them get opportunities. You think everyone climbs the ladder completely alone? They don't. They network. They use relationships. They accept help when it's offered. Let me help you. Okay. She nodded against his chest. Okay. Make your calls. He did. Within 2 days, Ava had 3 interviews scheduled at prestigious firms. Within a week, she had 2 job offers. The salary they were offering was more than she'd made in a year of waitressing. The work was exactly what she'd always wanted to do. She accepted the position at Luminous Design, a mid-sized firm in Midtown that specialized in commercial spaces. Her first day was terrifying. Walking into that office, meeting her new boss, seeing the other designers who all had degrees from better schools and years more experience. But she was good. Really good. Her first project was a restaurant redesign in Brooklyn. The clients loved it. Her boss was impressed. By the end of her first month, she'd proven she belonged there. Romeo was proud, ridiculously proud, talked about her work to anyone who'd listen, showed up at her office unannounced with lunch, took her to expensive dinners to celebrate every small victory. You're making too big a deal out of this, Ava told him after he'd sent flowers to her office for the 3rd time that month. It's just a job. It's not just a job. You're building a career. You're doing what you love. That deserves to be celebrated. Romeo pulled her close. Besides, I like spoiling you. Get used to it. The possessiveness that should have bothered her became endearing instead. The way he'd glare at any man who looked at her too long. The way he'd casually mention she was his girlfriend to everyone they encountered. The way he'd text her throughout the day just to check in. Where are you? One text would say. At work. Same place I was an hour ago. She'd respond. Just making sure. Miss you. It was overwhelming. Intense. Everything moving so fast. But it also felt inevitable. Like they'd been building toward this since that night on the street. Like finding each other was always meant to happen. 2 months in, Ava met Romeo's family. His mother, Rosa, was a tiny Italian woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. His sister, Isabella, was beautiful and protective and suspicious of any woman in her brother's life. They came to the penthouse for Sunday dinner. Romeo cooked traditional Italian dishes that filled the apartment with incredible smells. Ava helped where she could and tried not to be nervous. So you're the girl my son won't stop talking about. Rosa studied Ava over wine. The one who has him smiling again. Mama. Romeo's voice carried a warning. What? It's true. Rosa waved him off. You've been miserable for years, working too much, never meeting anyone. Now suddenly you're happy. She looked at Ava. Thank you for that. I didn't do anything. Ava felt her face heating. Romeo saved me. Not the other way around. He told us what happened. Isabella's voice was softer than Ava expected. How he found you. What that man tried to do. I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm grateful my son was there. Rosa reached across the table, squeezed Ava's hand. He's a good man. I know people say otherwise. I know what they call him. But he has a good heart. He protects people who need protecting. Always has. Ava looked at Romeo, saw him watching her with those intense dark eyes, saw the concern there, the worry that his family might scare her off. She smiled at him. I know. I've seen his good heart. I'm lucky to have found it. Something in Romeo's expression shifted, softened. He reached for her hand under the table, laced their fingers together. The dinner went well. Rosa told embarrassing childhood stories. Isabella warmed up once she realized Ava wasn't using Romeo for his money or connections. By the end of the night, they were making plans for Ava to come to family dinner every Sunday. They like you, Romeo said later, after his family had left and they were cleaning up. Mama especially. She told me not to screw this up. Wise woman. Ava handed him a dish to dry. I like them too. Your sister's protective of you. She has reason to be. Romeo set down the dish. I've had women in my life before who wanted the lifestyle more than they wanted me, who liked the idea of being with someone powerful. Isabella learned to be suspicious. And your mom? Lost my father 10 years ago. Heart attack. She's been worried about me ever since. Worried I work too much. Worried I'm alone. Worried I'll end up like him. Dead at 55 from stress. Romeo pulled Ava against him. You make her worry less. Make her think maybe I'll have a life outside of work. Will you? Have a life outside of work? I'm trying. With you. Romeo kissed her. This. What we have. It's the most normal thing in my life. The best thing. You make me want to be more than just the work. More than just the business. Ava kissed him back. Let herself sink into it. Into him. Into this life they were building together that should have been temporary but was starting to feel permanent. 3 months after that night on the street, Ava officially had a life in New York that looked nothing like what she'd imagined when she first moved to the city. She had a job she loved, an apartment that was really a penthouse she shared with a man who'd saved her life, a relationship that was intense and probably moving too fast, but felt more right than anything she'd ever experienced. She'd quit the Rosewood Cafe the week after Romeo found her. Couldn't go back there. Couldn't walk past David's usual booth without remembering. Romeo had sent someone to collect her final paycheck and her few belongings from the locker room. She'd never set foot in that place again. Her tiny studio in Washington Heights was still hers, technically. She paid rent on it with money Romeo gave her despite her protests. But she hadn't been back there in weeks. All her important things had migrated to Romeo's penthouse. Her clothes in his closet, her toiletries in his bathroom. Her life intertwined with his in ways that should have felt too fast but just felt inevitable. Sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Ava would lie in the dark and think about that night, about what would have happened if Romeo hadn't stopped his SUV, if he'd driven past like everyone else, if he'd decided getting involved wasn't worth the trouble. She'd be dead probably, or damaged in ways she couldn't fix. David hadn't struck her as the type to leave witnesses. Whatever he'd planned for her that night, it wouldn't have ended with her walking away intact. But Romeo had stopped, had saved her, had decided she was worth protecting, and in doing so had completely changed the trajectory of her life. "You're thinking too much." Romeo's voice in the darkness made her jump. She'd thought he was asleep. "I can hear you thinking from here." "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." "I was already awake." Romeo pulled her closer, tucked her head under his chin. "What are you thinking about?" "That night. How different things would be if you hadn't stopped." "Don't." His arms tightened around her. "Don't think about that. Don't imagine that timeline. I did stop. You're safe. You're here. That's all that matters. I know. But sometimes I wonder, why me? Why did you stop for me specifically? You must see bad things happening all the time. You can't save everyone." "No. But I saved you. And I'd do it again. Every time. In every timeline." Romeo kissed the top of her head. "You want to know the truth? The real reason I stopped?" "Yes. Because you looked like you were still fighting, stumbling and drugged and barely able to stand. But you were still moving forward, still trying to get away, still refusing to just give up and let him catch you. And something about that, about your refusal to quit even when everything was against you, made me think you were worth saving." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's the truth. You're a fighter, Ava. You just didn't have anyone in your corner before. Now you do. Now you have me. And I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise." Romeo tilted her face up, kissed her in the darkness. "You're stuck with me now. Better get used to it. I think I can manage that." Ava kissed him back. "I think I can definitely manage that." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped around each other. Not sleeping, but not needing to talk either. Just being together in the quiet darkness of a penthouse in Hell's Kitchen where a waitress and a mafia boss had found something that looked a lot like love. Ava still had moments where she questioned everything, where she wondered if this was real, or if it was just trauma bonding or gratitude masquerading as feelings, where she worried that Romeo would wake up one day and realize she was just a girl he'd saved, not someone worth keeping. But then he'd look at her, really look at her with those dark eyes that saw everything. And he'd say something in Italian she was learning meant my heart, or my soul, or forever. And he'd touch her like she was precious. And all her doubts would quiet. Because this was real. Messy and complicated and born from darkness. But real. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and decided to build something beautiful anyway. And if that meant being with a dangerous man who'd killed for her and would kill again. If that meant living in a world where violence existed just outside her bubble of safety. If that meant belonging to someone possessive and intense and probably unhealthy by normal standards. Well, Ava had learned that normal was overrated. That safety was more valuable than she'd ever understood. That being claimed by someone who actually valued you was better than being invisible to everyone. She still lived in his penthouse. In his bedroom now, not the guest room. Her things mixed with his. Her design sketches on his dining table. Her favorite tea in his kitchen. Her laughter in his space. They worked. Impossibly, against all logic, they worked. Romeo was protective and possessive and demanding, but also attentive and caring and proud of everything she accomplished. He encouraged her creativity, supported her career, made space for her to be independent, while making it very clear she was his. The darkness in his life existed. The violence. The crime. The things he did that she didn't ask about, and he didn't volunteer. But it never touched her. He kept that world separate, kept her safe from it, kept his promise that nothing would hurt her. Ava knew she should probably think more carefully about being in a relationship with a mafia boss. Should worry about the future. Should consider the risks. But when Romeo looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world, when he came home and pulled her into his arms like he'd been missing her all day, when he whispered in Italian words she was learning meant mine and beloved and always, when he protected her and cared for her and loved her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but was just right. She couldn't regret it, couldn't wish it undone, couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Because Romeo Costa had found her at her most vulnerable, had saved her when no one else would, had taken her broken and scared and made her strong and confident and loved. And if the cost of that was belonging to a dangerous man, well, maybe dangerous was exactly what she needed. If you enjoyed this story of protection and possession, of finding safety in dangerous arms and love in unexpected places, subscribe to our channel for more Mafia romance stories that will make your heart race. Leave a comment telling us what you loved most about Romeo and Ava's story. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our next tale of dangerous men and the women who tame them. Thank you for reading, and remember that sometimes the person who saves you is exactly the person you were meant to find.